Namaskar and welcome to this exciting episode of Sattology Debunking Mythology. Sattology means science of truth, a study of truth. Opposite of that is mythology, which means science or study of fake lie or imagination. Please do not call Ramayana, Mahabharata, Purana history as mythology. I included Purana today because most of the Puranic stories may not be from this planet. They are universal stories and or may have happened so long back that the physical references may not exist. Okay, so do not call them mythology because somebody has written it, somebody has verified it, and the people who write histories in the Vedic culture are the great rishis. They can see the past, present, and future because of their yoga sadhana, yoga siddhi. So, and they have been given special powers to do that. Just like today, I'll give you a very short example. All the modern diplomats get special passports. They don't have to go through immigration. Okay, so there is a rule bent for them in a human society. So similarly, in higher realms of existence, these great rishis have special vision given by Brahma or Shivji, somebody else. So I have very special guest. You love his videos. And today we're going to talk further about these topics. Let us welcome Dr. Raja Ram Mohan Roy. Namaskar.
Thank you, Aditi. Namaskar.
Thank you. So, the very interesting that nowadays is I really am very happy that the Hindus are actually questioning everything. I mean, what has happened with them? The whole world was Hindu. Now we know gradually. And it from Hindu community, like even in Europe, Romanis were converted forcibly. And Romanis openly said they were Hindus. Germanic tribes, Celtic tribes, and people may disagree with me, but if they disagree, they can read my book Gold, Glory, and God, and they can find out what I have researched myself with my own efforts, little efforts. So the finally the people who were converted are questioning everything. What is your view on that? And we'll start with the show.
Thank you, Aditi. Like you mentioned, with so many different people, so many different countries, like the Romanis. I mean, for them, the Romanis were Indian people, in fact. I mean,
Right.
they were scattered, what Al-Biruni says, scattered out of India when
Correct.
Ghazni attacked. So
Yes.
basically, he was killing everyone and looting and just a monstrous person. And then tens of thousands, probably hundreds of thousands of people just fled from the regions he was invading, and they ended up all the way into the Europe, and they were like tribal people, like what we call Banjaras in India. They're just moving around, and they became Romani. But people have studied their language, and there are so many words. If you hear them, you may think that you are listening to Hindi.
That's right. Hindi and one of my neighbors, he told me I'm from Romania, and I showed him his real flag, and they had the wheel in the flag in the middle. It's like
Yes.
chakra, Ashok chakra, like that. They have a wheel in the middle. I said, why? How come? I said, every like they may look exactly white because they're European origin now, and the skin is European, but they are Romanis, and the Europeans and the churchgoers in Europe rejected them. They were took away their rights, and what happened to them in Turkey? They were forced to convert to Islam, and Turkey has a huge population. I mean, people do not know that Romani people, they are approximately 60 to 70 million people, not small population, and they live in the US, they live in many parts of the world, and they have been consistently harassed, and they don't have a nation. If they were a nation, then they'll make up 20% of Europe or 30% of Europe. Actually, not even that. Yes, 35% of Europe.
Right.
Mm. So let's get started and then we'll continue our discussion.
Sure. So, Aditi, I will share the presentation.
Yeah. So while Dr. Raja Ram Mohan Roy is sharing it, please do like, share, and subscribe to our videos and tell others about it. Okay. And
Okay, so I'm going to put it on full screen.
yes, please. Yeah, go ahead. And I love today's presentation because it's all about this is a fact. I recorded in my first book as well, and now we'll see some more proofs now.
Excellent. So Aditya, we will continue. Excuse me. I'll continue from the last talk. And in the last talk, we saw how the Alexander came to India. We traced his route, and then we came up to the famous battle in which he fought with Porus. And then we said that we are going to analyze this further. So in this talk, we are going to look at what the Greeks are telling themselves and analyze that. And that analysis will clearly show that it was Alexander who suffered a devastating defeat. It was not the Porus who was defeated. So to go to the background, what we discussed in the last talk is that Alexander was born in 356 BCE. About 19 years of age, he ascended the throne, and then he was ruling for about 13 years after that. And during this time, he conquered the Persian Empire, and he then went to Central Asia, and finally he came to Taxila. And as he came to Taxila, the ruler he meekly surrendered and became his ally. And after that, they crossed the Hydaspes river, across which Porus was ruling. So this beyond Hydaspes, we had a fearless warrior king. His name was Porus, and he was ready and he was willing to defend his kingdom at any cost. And at that time, we saw that it was not easy to cross the Hydaspes, while Porus was watching, and he was willing to attack them while they were crossing themselves. And then we came to the final point in which, according to the Greek historians, Porus is taken prisoner, and when he's taken to Alexander, and he asked him how he wished to be treated, Porus said he wished to be treated like a king. And after hearing this reply, he not only returned his kingdom, but he added to his kingdom. And this is shown as the greatness of Alexander. But is this what really happened? And what happened can be figured out by analyzing the aftermath of this battle. So what happened after the battle? If you analyze that, and the Greek sources give you the descriptions, then you will be able to figure out what really happened. So this was the famous battle of the Hydaspes, and which is the same as the Jhelum River. So here we see that we have got these major rivers in Pakistan. That's where this happened, current day Pakistan. And so we have got the Indus and Sindhu River, which was crossed. And this is Islamabad here. So around here, about 25, 30 miles was Taxila. So it was this area that that Ambi was ruling, or Taxilas was ruling. And then they come across here, and this is the area of Porus. And you see that this is the Hydaspes or the Jhelum River, and further going across is the Chenab River, which is called Acacians by these Greeks. So we come to this battle of the Hydaspes, and when I was searching for it, I found out that there was a description of it given by a Marshal Georgy Zhukov. Now, this Marshal Georgy Zhukov, he was not an ordinary man. So he was the commander of the Russian Red Army, and this was the army that pushed the Nazi army from Stalingrad all the way to the Berlin. So he was the most successful Russian general during the World War II, and he was also known as the man who did not lose a battle. And he had come to India in 1957 to this Indian Military Academy, Dehradun. And this is what he said about this battle of Hydaspes. So this is from an article written by Mr. Rakesh Krishnan Sinha, Marshal Zhukov on Alexander's failure in Indian invasion. So what he says that Alexander's invasion of India is regarded as a huge Western victory against the disorganized East. But according to Marshal Georgy Zhukov, the largely Macedonian army suffered a fate worse than Napoleon in Russia. And this article, the same article by Mr. Rakesh Krishnan Sinha, it tells you that he thought, this Marshal Zhukov, that Alexander had suffered a greater setback in India than Napoleon in Russia. And so if Zhukov was comparing Alexander's campaign in India to Napoleon's disaster, the Macedonian and the Greeks must have retreated in an equally ignominious fashion. And Zhukov would know of fleeing force if he saw one. He had chased the German army over 2,000 kilometers from Stalingrad to Berlin. So this is not an ordinary man, the marshal or commander. And why would he think so? And why did he think that it was Alexander who was defeated? And to know that, we have to critically analyze the information that Greeks have given us. So I have gone through the book, and we talked about that the book by McCrindle in the last talk. And so I have my arguments into 14 different arguments that will show that Alexander suffered a crushing defeat at the Battle of the Hydaspes. So the first one is, just think of this. We are told that Alexander asked Porus, how do you want to be treated? And he says, treat me as befits a king. And then Alexander returns him everything, or his land, and even added to his territory. Alexander was more delighted than ever with this rejoinder, and not only appointed Porus to govern his over Indians, but added to his original territory another of greater extent. So, I mean, when has this happened before in history, that somebody who has been defeated has been returned his kingdom, not only returned, but added to his kingdom? And obviously, this is too good to be true. There is no example of this in history. And if it is too good to be true, it probably is. So basically, what we see that we have been given a scenario which is very unlikely to have happened. Now, we need to contrast this with what kind of person Alexander was. I mean, a person is not suddenly going to become a good person if he has been a cruel, a bad person all through his life. But if you look at his life, all through, he was not a nice man at all. So we basically starts with the assassination of his father himself, in 336 BCE. And people are already have suspicion that Alexander was involved in the assassination of his father to get to the throne quickly. And you see, we have evidence that one of these Greek historians, Justin, suspected that there may have been a larger plot to kill the king, which may have included Alexander and his mother. And not only that, and we start from there, and we see that there is just a trail of blood all through. He killed many of his close subordinates unjustly. Here we have, according to Arian, one of these Greek historians, Perilous. So he's one of the Greek soldiers, made the following accusation before his execution. And he says, he then recounted all his acts of despotism, the illegal execution of Perilous, the still more illegal one of his father, Parmenio, and of others who were put to death at that time, the murder of Cletus in a fit of drunkenness. He said that being no longer able to bear these things, he wished to free both himself and other Macedonians. And of course, McGrindle has described this execution of Philotas in the following words. And he says that here an event occurred which has left a dark stain on the character of Alexander. And so basically, we see that he has been executing his own soldiers, commanders, at least suspicion. And this one is the treatment of Bessus. And now he was, by Alexander, is even more horrific. So it says, Alexander gathered a conference of who were then at hand and led Bessus in before them. Having accused him of the betrayal of Darius, he ordered his nose and ears to be cut off, and that he should be taken to Ecbatana to be put to death there in the council of the Medes and the Persians. So basically, Bessus was the Iranian ruler after Darius had fallen. And then Alexander basically wanted to dishonor him in front of everybody else. And he got his nose and ears cut off. How terrible is that? And then Alexander even violated his own treaty by killing a number of people defending the town of Masaga after granting them immunity. So when he attacked this place and came to a treaty, so he was basically dishonest. He did not want to honor the treaty, and then he just attacked and killed them while they were not even fighting. So when the capitulation on these terms had been ratified by oaths, the queen of Masaga, to show her admiration of Alexander's magnanimity, sent out to him most valuable presents with an intimation that she would fulfill all the stipulations. And then look what Alexander did. And you have this right from the Greek historians. But Alexander, who was actuated by the implacable enmity against the mercenaries, kept his troops under arms ready for action, pursuing the barbarians. I mean, that's what they call us. And falling suddenly upon them, made a great slaughter of their ranks. The barbarians at first loudly protested that they were attacked in violation of sworn obligations, and invoked the gods whom he had desecrated by taking false oaths in their name. And it continues, when many were thus wounded, then the women taking the arms fought side by side with the men, and they met glorious death. Now, you see that there is a whole this trail of blood, his cruelty all through his life. And there was a documentary made in 2009. It was called Ancients Behaving Badly. It was on the History Channel. And in this one, they analyzed various historical persons, whether they were goal-driven killers to psychopathic murderers. And among them, they had these episodes on various historical figures, Caligula, Attila the Hun, Julius Caesar, Alexander the Great, Nero, so all these people. And just to make this list, it tells you what kind of a cruel person he must be, so that these people will include him into this documentary, which basically tells whether they were goal-driven killers or psychopathic murderers. And here is the link at the bottom for the YouTube. Do watch it, and Ancients Behaving Badly. And this tells you all the brutalities that Alexander had committed. So basically, what we have is that not only the cruelty, but in general, but is that he never showed any kindness to anyone who opposed him. So he did not like anyone opposing him. So we are being told that Alexander was very kind to Porus because he was very impressed by his bravery. But he never shown any kindness to anyone who had opposed him. And here we have a quote from Diodorus. He took many other cities and put to death all who offered resistance to his arms. So anybody who offered any resistance, they were killed. And he continues, to resist Alexander was to incur his wrath, regardless of your religious beliefs, culture, persuasion, or ethnic identity. Throughout military operations, Alexander followed a policy rewarding those who surrendered quickly, just like the ruler of Taxila, Ambi, and punishing severely those who resisted. The classic example of the latter was his destruction of the rebellious city of Thebes, one of the great cities of Hellenic civilization. And we talked about this in the last talk, that when Alexander campaigned to unite the whole Greek under his rule, and Thebes did not exceed. So when he conquered Thebes, he just destroyed the whole city. And so that's his merciless treatment of the vanquished darkly overshadows the glory of this memorial exploit. So you have to think about that, that if Alexander was never kind to people resisting him, how can he suddenly become so kind to Porus? And we come to the fourth point, and we have been told that Alexander's army refused to fight. They were not willing to fight. They argued with Alexander that across further in India, there's this huge empire, and they are too tired and they want to go back. They don't want to fight. The battle with, and we have this quote here, the battle with Porus depressed the spirits of Macedonians and made them very unwilling to advance further into India. For as it was the utmost difficulty, they had beaten him when the army he led amounted only to 20,000 infantry and 2,000 cavalry. They now most resolutely opposed Alexander when he insisted that they should cross the Ganges. But this has never happened either in the past. Never before in history, and that includes up to our time, that army has refused to fight. If it in ancient times, the soldiers would be simply executed if they don't want to fight, if they don't agree to the commander. So armies have never had a choice in fighting anywhere in the world. It was always up to the ruler, leader, commander to decide. We can therefore surmise that the Greek historians have cooked up an elaborate excuse to hide the real outcome of the battle. And continuing further, we know that Alexander was at a clear disadvantage because he had to cross a flooded river. And on the other side, Porus was waiting with his army. He had people appointed to look around all along the banks to see if they try to cross and to attack them while they are crossing. And we have the quote here, it says, for he had learned that Porus with the whole of his army lay on the other side of the river, resolved either to prevent him from making the passage or to attack him when crossing. They themselves accept that he was ready to attack them while they are crossing. So he was clearly at a severe disadvantage. And even at the night of the crossing, the situation was pretty bad. It was a dark and stormy night. And then he tried to cross. There was a violent thunderstorm. Rain fell down in torrents. You can see how bad things are when they're trying to cross. And on the opposite side, these archers are ready with these huge bow and arrows to attack them. The Hydaspes was now flooded by the rains, and its raging current had chosen a new channel of great width, down with a great body of water was carried. In fording this new bed, he could with difficulty keep his footing, as the bottom was very slippery and uneven. So see how in what difficult position Alexander was. So under these circumstances, when crossing the Hydaspes was itself so fraught with danger, how was an army going to cross the river and then fight an enemy who was ready, on guard, and determined not to let them cross the river? Was Porus just going to sit and watch while they tried to cross the river? And we have got some descriptions here about this crossing. And it says, that Aristobulus says that the son of Porus arrived with 60 chariots before Alexander made the final passage. So they accept that they were already there before he has even crossed, and that he could have hindered Alexander from landing. He could have really stopped him, for he made the passage with difficulty, even with no one opposed him. If the Indians had but leaped down from their chariots and fallen upon those who first stepped on shore. The prince, however, passed by with his chariots and allowed Alexander to accomplish the passage in complete safety. So this is what he says. This is one description, that even though the son of Porus has seen him and he has not still crossed, he let them cross so that he can come make a battle configuration and then he will fight. How laughable is that? But then you have got other descriptions. Obviously, they are not consistent because they are cooking up. When you cook up, you become inconsistent. So other writers say that while the troops were landing, an encounter took place between the Indians who had come with the son of Porus and Alexander at the head of his cavalry, and that as the son of Porus had come with a superior force, Alexander himself was wounded by the Indian prince, and that his favorite horse, Bucephalus, was killed, having been wounded like his master by the son of Porus. So see, here is your direct admission that while crossing itself, he was attacked and Alexander was badly hurt and his horse was killed. It's a big thing because this horse was very dear to Alexander. He won't let anybody harm that horse. And then we have this argument that the chariots of the army of Porus got stuck in the clay. And we have this quotation. Ptolemy states further that Alexander at first dispatched against the prince the horse archers and led the cavalry himself under the belief that Porus was advancing against him with the whole of his army, and that this was a body of advanced cavalry thrown forward by Porus. But when he discovered what the real strength of the Indians was, he then briskly charged them with what cavalry he had with him. And this says, when they noticed that Alexander himself and his body of cavalry did not charge them in an extended line, but by the squadrons, their ranks gave way, their horsemen fell, and among them the son of Porus. Their chariots, moreover, were captured, horses and all, for they proved heavy in the retreat and useless in the action itself, by having stuck fast in the clay. And this is what we have been told is the main reason Porus lost, because the chariots got stuck in the clay. Really. So you think about this. It was Alexander who was in a foreign land, thousands of miles away from Greece. And it was Porus fighting on his own land, son of the soil. Who is going to know the ground conditions better, Porus or Alexander? So if chariots are going to get stuck, will not Porus know even before he comes to battle that these Greeks have cooked up? And we claim that the chariots were stuck in the clay, while this Alexander and his army, they were moving freely on the horses, which resulted in Alexander's victory. But guess what? What was pulling the chariots of the army of Porus? Horses. And how long would it take to separate the horses from the chariots if they were getting stuck? I mean, they will just free the horses and then fight on the horses. Why would they keep getting? They will be just sitting in the chariots like the sitting duck. I mean, how ridiculous is that? And if you see the description of the battle, and you'll see that it was Alexander who kept on sending emissaries to Porus during the battle. So if Porus was really losing the battle, then why was Alexander sending these emissaries after emissaries to ask Porus to stop fighting? And here we have the quote from Arrian. And he says, when he found himself wounded, he turned his elephant around, began to retire. Alexander, perceiving that he was a great man, valiant in fight. And you see, suddenly, never before anybody was valiant or great. And suddenly we have Porus, and Alexander considers him valiant and great. First of all, he sent Taxilus to him. And Porus was so angry on finding that a speaker was his old enemy Taxilus, he turned around and prepared to smite him with his javelin, and he would probably have killed him had not Taxilas instantly put his horse to the gallop and got beyond the reach of Porus. So basically, Alexander sends people to Porus to tell him to stop fighting. Why are you fighting? And it continues, but not even for this act did Alexander feel any resentment. So he sends people, Porus tries to hit them, they come back, and Alexander is not even angry. He sends another one. Porus sent to him messenger after messenger. Last of them, Meros, an Indian, as he had learned that Porus and this Meros were old friends. As soon as Porus heard this message, which Morahari was just a time when he was overpowered by thirst, he made his elephant halt and dismounted. So this is what we have been told. Now, it is hard to imagine why Alexander would have been so anxious to save the life of Porus. I mean, what was Porus to him? Why would he be? He was not his relative. He was nobody to him. He was the one who challenged him, who was fighting him, who was killing his army. His horse was dead. Why would he be so nice to Porus? There's no reason. And why would he keep sending people after people to tell him to stop fighting? And you have to think of that. And the situation was completely otherwise. And then we know that the point number 8 is that why did Taxilas join Alexander? So one of them was that he has already told that he was not at good terms with Porus. So basically, he wanted Alexander to defeat Porus and give his kingdom to him. So that what he wanted. But that's not what happened. And we have the quote saying that after the battle, designing now to make for the ocean with 1,000 ships, the Indian kings who had been disagreeing about the Porus and Taxilas and raking up old feuds in friendly relations with each other, strengthened by a marriage alliance. And as they had done their utmost to help him forward with the building of his fleet, he confirmed each in his sovereignty. So basically, they are telling that Alexander made Porus and Taxilas friends and even effected a marriage relationship. Now, what kind of relationship would be that? We can guess that Porus had actually won, and because of that, now the area that is ruled by Taxilas was also ruled by Porus, and Taxilas then would have given his daughter in marriage to Porus, just like the way it happened with Seleucus and Chandragupta. So it says Alexander gave all the regions he had conquered to Porus, and Taxilas was simply sent back. And we have the quote here. In this manner, he took 7 and 30 cities, the small of which contained not fewer than 5,000 inhabitants. He also took a great many villages, and this country he gave to Porus to rule. Between him and Taxilas, he effected a reconciliation, and then just sent Taxilas back home to his capital. So we see that this whole scenario that the Greeks are discussing after the battle is not consistent with Alexander really having won this battle. And this point, which nobody has ever raised, is this about the death of Alexander's horse, who is named Bucephalus. And about this horse, his horse, Alexander loved this horse so much that we have this quote from Diodorus. When the equipment of the fleet was finished, 200 boats without hatches and 800 tenders, he proceeded to give names to the cities which had been founded on the banks of the river, calling one Nicaea in commemoration of his victory, and the other Bucephala after his horse that perished in the battle with Porus. So what we are being told that his horse was dead in this battle, and Alexander he established a city there on the banks of this, named after this horse, like he loved his horse so much. And McGrindle has the following comments about this horse. It is also told of this horse that in the Indian war, with Alexander mounted upon him, and performing noble deeds of bravery, had with too little heed for his own safety, entangled himself amid a battalion of the enemy, where he was on all sides assailed with darts. His horse was stabbed with deep wounds in the neck and sides, ready to expire, and drained of nearly all his blood. He nevertheless bore back the king from the midst of his foes at a most rapid pace. Basically, you see that Alexander was totally surrounded and he was attacked. He was also injured, and his horse was dead in this battle when Alexander was attacked by the army of Porus. But this was no ordinary horse. Alexander loved this horse so much that we are told about this horse further back before the battle of Hydaspes about these people called Oxians. So this horse, this Bucephalus, was never mounted by anyone except Alexander, for he disdained all other riders. Like you will see in some Hindi movies, this horse can only be ridden by this hero. In the country of the Oxians, this horse disappeared from Alexander, who sent a proclamation through the land that he would kill all the Oxians if they did not bring him his horse, and brought back he was immediately after the proclamation had been issued. So great was Alexander's attachment to his favorite, and so great was the fear of Alexander which prevailed among the barbarians. So basically, anybody who opposed him were all barbarians. But you see that here, he loved this horse so much that he just went missing, and then he was willing to kill the whole tribe of Oxians, all these hundreds of thousands of people for that horse. If he is not returned immediately, he was going to kill all that people. Loved the horse so much, and that horse was killed in this battle with Porus, and he would leave the Porus alive. If Porus had lost the battle in which the Alexander horse had died, there was no way Alexander would have left Porus alive. So what the Greek writers have done, they have tried to twist the outcome of the battle, but have clearly failed to hide it. It was Alexander who was surrounded by enemies from all sides and attacked. He was injured badly. His horse barely managed to take him to safety. It follows that it was Alexander who was sending messengers after messengers to Porus to stop the battle. And but what happened after the battle? And we are told that Alexander did not return the way he came. So Alexander did not return by the land route the way he came. So when Alexander had decided that he was not going further, he did not return by the land route he had taken to come to India. Basically, a victor would have gone back celebrating. Instead, he went back through uncharted territories, endangering the lives of his army. The reason is clear, that Alexander was not allowed to go back using the land route by Porus. So basically, the Porus let him live. He was still a strategic thinker. So Porus was not only a great warrior, but also a very strategic thinker. And obviously, he figured out that if he let Alexander go back across the Hydaspes, then Alexander was simply going to strengthen his army and come back to avenge his defeat. So Porus gave him the only option of taking a route that was going to destroy his power. So here we have the map of Alexander's route, and you see here that here is Taxila, and here is the battle area, the Battle of Hydaspes. And see, he did not go back. They have made up some story here of some further exploits, but he goes back this way through the river Hydaspes and then through Indus all the way to the sea. And here you see that we have the Karachi here at the mouth of the Indus. And so this is the route. Why did not he go back this way? The way he has come back, the route that he has known, the territories he has conquered. Because this he was not allowed. And we see here the point number 11 is that Alexander's army was building ships for months after the battle. So what happened to all this army that was so fatigued, so tired? They don't want to go any further, and they wanted to go back to their homeland. But what we have? We have Alexander had to go back by sailing through Hydaspes first, and then through the Indus River. And it took his army months to cut trees and build the fleet. So why would Alexander's army take up so much work when they were too tired to fight? And this is what we have from the Greek writers. Strabo has written this. Between the Hydaspes and Achaeans, so we have between the Jhelum and Chenab in the country of Porus, an extensive and fertile district containing somewhere around 300 cities. Here in the neighborhood of the Imodoi mountains, we assume it's a Himalayan mountain, is the forest where Alexander cut a great quantity of pine, cedar, various other trees fit for shipbuilding. This timber he brought down the Hydaspes and with it constructed a fleet on that river. Why would they do that? Why would they be cutting all these trees, take so much work, effort, cut these to timber, then make a whole fleet to go through the river? And why would they do that? And they don't even know this route. So this is what we saw, that they are going through the river back. They did not go back through the land that they came. And they don't know this route at all. So Alexander basically took an unknown perilous route back through the Hydaspes and the Indus rivers to sea. And here we have the map of this area. So we have seen that here. So this is here we have got the Taxilas, so and this Jhelum river, and here we have the rule of Porus, and then further east we have got the Chenab river. So what he does, so he cuts the trees around this area, makes his fleet, and then he goes down river this way, like that, and then he comes to this Indus and then continues. This is the route he took. And here we have a satellite map of the area to give you the better background. So now instead of those drawing, here you have the actual ones. So you see here we got Indus and then Jhelum, Chenab, and then continue, I think, Rabi and then Vyas, and they all come and merge here. So this is the route he's taking like that. And see that this was not a very safe route. And here is what we are being told happened at the junction of the Hydaspes and Indus River. But the meeting of the rivers makes the water swell in great, like those of the ocean. The navigable way is compressed in narrow channels by extensive mud banks. They were unable to execute his orders in time, and before the eyes of all, two of the large ships were engulfed in the stream. The ship, which had the king himself on board, was caught in the eddies of the greatest violence, and by their force was irresistibly driven athwart and whirled onward without answering the helm. He had already stripped off his clothes preparatory to throwing himself into the river, while his friends were swimming about not far off, ready to pick him up. Can you see that? They have made this fleet and they don't know the route, and then we have got all these the rivers. They have got uneven flow. They have got turbulence, and people are getting thrown out of their ship. They are floating in the river. Is this the way a victor will go back? And then it gets bad to worse. They were now exposed to fierce nations that with their blood they were being attacked, might open for him a way to the ocean. They were unable to execute their orders in time, and before the eyes of all, two of the large ships were engulfed in the stream. The king, troubled not by any fear for himself, but by the anxiety of the soldiers about their safety, called them together and pointed out to them that those of whom they were afraid were weak and unwarlike, that after the conquest of these tribes there was nothing in their way. They should not then grudge him the glory to which he aspired. And this is a clinching line. They should permit him to return from India with honor, not to escape from it like a fugitive. See what happened. If he had won against Porus, is this the way things were going to turn up? Is this what he will take it willingly, force himself through so much ignominy? So why would Alexander take a perilous route if Alexander had won the battle with Porus? Is it conceivable that the greatest military strategist of all times, who have traveled thousands of miles to reach the land of Porus, did not know what awaited him down the river if he took a journey through Hydaspes? If his soldiers could oppose going further into India, why would his soldiers agree to sail through this perilous route? I mean, all this army, people they fight, what did they do? They want the booty. They would like to enjoy their looted wealth by going safely or engender their life needlessly. So clearly, these events after what they have described, they are very clearly so that Alexander had lost to Porus and he was left with no choice by Porus but to take this perilous journey to survive. And here is the 13th point, that Alexander lost most of his army on the way back. He had no clue what awaited him. Why would a commander who had won do this to his army and himself? So this is the map that we had seen, that he had come all the way from Hydaspes all the way, and so many river junctions we saw, that Ravi, Vyas, all, and then finally into Indus, and then come to the mouth of Indus to the Karachi area. And then he divided his army, and then some of them went on the ship along the banks, and most of them through this desert area. And so you can see that this is the area, this is Karachi, and they sailed along this, like that they went, and then they finally went to this area where he died. So when Alexander reached close to the sea, he divided his army. So one division took the sea route, and another division followed the land route through the desert of what they call Gedrosia, which basically coastal Baluchistan. And here is how Strabo describes this return journey. But Alexander suffered sorely all throughout his march, as his road lay through a miserably barren country. He was equally unfortunate in the matter of provisions, which were not only brought from a distance, but brought so seldom and in such small quantities that the army suffered greatly from hunger. Imagine, he won this battle and he is making his army die starving. In addition to the want of provisions, the scorching heat and depth of the sand and its burning heat were hard to bear. Others, exhausted by thirst, lay exposed to the sun in the middle of the road, their legs and arms twitching convulsively. And they died like persons seized and shivering. Some turned aside from the road to indulge in sleep, overcome with drowsiness and fatigue. Being thus left behind, some of them lost their way and perished from utter destitution and the heat, while others escaped with their lives after direful sufferings. And according to Plutarch, Alexander lost more than 3/4 of his army on the way back from India. He himself, returning by land with the army, marching through the country of the Oratai, where he has reduced to the sorest straits from the scarcity of provisions, and lost such numbers of men that he hardly brought back from India the 4th part of his military force, though he entered it with 120,000 foot and 15,000 horse. Many perished from malignant distempers, wretched food, and scorching heat, but most from sheer hunger. So Going through this, he had lost more than three-fourths of his army. No military commander would willingly let that happen to their army. Alexander, who is considered to be the greatest military commander till his time, and probably even till our time by many, would let this happen to his army is inconceivable. The only sensible explanation for this turn of events is his defeat at the hands of Porus. And finally, coming to the final 14th point, is that Alexander's historians lie about things, and they have been accused of this by their own people. So the arguments presented so far clearly point to the possibility that Greek historians have lied regarding the outcome of the Battle of the Hydaspes. They have turned Alexander's defeat into a fictitious tale of his magnanimity. In fact, one of their own, Strabo had accused the Greek writers of being liars. And he says, generally speaking, the men who hitherto have written on the affairs of India were a set of liars. Dimachus holds the first place in the list. Megasthenes comes next, while Onesicritus and Nearchus, with others of the same class, managed to stammer out a few words of truth. And here is the quotation is taken from, the reference is there. And McGrindle makes the following remarks. This about Plutarch. This seems an almost inexcusable mistake on Plutarch's part. He's conducting Alexander as far as Ganges. The author of the Perilous made the same egregious blunder. It is possible, however, to put a different construction on the expressions used by Plutarch and to suppose that he wrote so carelessly that he did not mean what his words seem to imply. So this is the credibility of these Greek historians. So basically, we can see that Alexander lost very badly. His horse was killed in the battle. He was himself injured badly, and he was pleading with Porus to stop the fighting. And then we can guess that what the Greek writers have told about the exchange between Alexander and Porus actually happened other way. And it was Alexander who was asked by Porus how he should be treated. And it would be Alexander who would say that like a king. And then Porus, after great thought, he basically gave him the only choice of taking this route through this river. And obviously now he controlled both sides of Hydaspes. So the army was now his subordinate. So obviously Alexander would have to go through the river all the way up to where the rule of Ambi ended. He could not have just come back, jumped the banks, because the men of Porus, the army of Porus, will be guarding both sides and making sure they would just follow that route through the river to their destruction. And if they survive, they survive. Their luck. Hard choice, but very good thing on part of Porus, and that saved India from Alexander's invasion. So I have presented the arguments that clearly show from the Greek writing itself, that you analyze them carefully, that it was Porus who had won. And so basically, it is up to the historians now to decide what to believe: a series of extraordinary events or a likely set of events consistent with Alexander's character. A warrior of indomitable courage named Porus, who fought fearlessly to save his kingdom from being plundered by Alexander's army. He deserves his respectful place in the annals of history. Now, should he be denied justice and honor just because he did not employ historians to write the saga of his bravery? So basically, that concludes this talk. And so far, this is the 8th talk. In part 1 to 6, we have discussed the very foundations on which the Indian history has been written. And we found that those foundations are the identification of Chandragupta Maurya with Alexander's contemporary Sandrocotus, and of Ashok Morj with Devanam Priyadarshi. And I have shown that we have better alternatives. Chandragupta I of Imperial Gupta dynasty as the Sandrocotus of Greek accounts, and Kumar Gupta I, his great grandson, as the Devanam Priyadarshi. So, just the same way that historians have constructed our history, we can construct our history based upon these two seat anchors. And we have started this reconstruction in these two parts, the last talk and this talk, in which we have shown that the history regarding the Battle of Alexander with Porus is completely wrong, and it was Alexander who was devastated, who had suffered a very devastating defeat. And with this, now in the coming presentations, I will talk about an alternative timeline of Indian history from Alexander's invasion to Arab invasion, about 1,000 years of history. And we can see that we can interpret the evidence in completely different way. It's completely different from what is being taught in our history. But this set of events that I have constructed is very faithful and closer to our traditions. So in the coming talk, we'll talk about what was happening in India as Alexander's army was moving towards it, who ruled northern parts of India at that time, and we'll discuss how we can construct a history in which imperial Guptas were the contemporary of Alexander. So thank you, Aditya, so much for this talk, and thanks to Dr. Mahendra Thakur and the Sattology team for organizing this talk. And if you want to get in touch with me, here are my contacts. Thank you, Aditya.
One thing is very clear, Greek historians have fooled the world for many years with their version of the story. And unfortunately, the Indian syndrome is that whatever is West tells us is a truth. And gradually, what you said about the historians will correct it, I don't think this is going to happen. It's going to be the scientists like you and the engineers like us. We are going to correct it because we are not going to hear from historians. That's the whole problem. That the historians are busy in peddling colonial narratives and Europeanism, which is European centric, which is, we are seeing that how US is sad over Queen's death, and they fought against the Queen in the first place to get independence. And Indians are sad over Queen's demise. Where the Indians fought against the Queen, most of the atrocities against India were done when the Queen was ruling. She turned a blind eye. And I can't remember the old pictures in 1930s, 1940s, where people used to line up to get Queen's grace. And that was India, used to happen that. And yesterday, one of the Tucker Carlson commented, he commented that there's nothing greater than Victoria Terminus in railway station, and he forgets that was a symbol of looting India's wealth. Not
I remember there was a movie called Victoria Number 203, I think.
I
think it's some kind of it's a good movie, detective movie, but you know the name.
Yeah, Victoria. And we have a joke also, like, are you Queen Victoria? People ask. Anyway, thank you so much. What a wonderful one. And I can add to that because a little bit, I also took a lot of help from the Moscow University. Actually, I visited Moscow for this particular data. And so Alexander attacked India, which is today, that part of India is in Pakistan now, with 40,000 soldiers, and he went back with only 500. So it is a victory or a defeat, and that too half dead. He was carried. He wanted to run away from India as far as possible. So any of the Greeks who are watching this show, because I know there is some good viewership we have in Greece, and any of the Greeks who are watching, please tell your historians to correct it. And we have a very good work Dr. Raja Ram Mohan Roy has done to put it in a systematic way. And if you have any problems, you can refer to my book also. A lot of details over there. Sattology, Debunking Mythology has the details in that also. Namaste, Dr. Raja Ram Mohan Roy, and thank you all the viewers. Do like, subscribe, and share the videos so that we get maximum views for this show. Namaste.
Namaste. Thank you so much.